Hey guys, this is the second part of that video I did on overhead upward rotation of the scapula. I watched some videos, Eric Cressey videos, that I kind of wanted to share with you. I highly recommend that you watch the two videos first before watching this video. Otherwise, if you just decide to watch this video with my commentary, it might be a little bit annoying because I pause it and I talk, and that might get on somebody's nerves. But if you've seen these videos before, there's probably a good chance you haven't. Leave a comment below, share your experience with me, and let me know if you find this information useful. All right, let's get to the videos. All right, so we're continuing the discussion about overhead work, overhead upward rotation of the shoulders, and I want to do commentary on this video here at Eric Cressey on Will Fleming's channel, and let's go watch it together.
Some of the contraindications to doing any kind of overhead work, whether it's a snatch, a push jerk, traditional overhead pressing, whatever it may be. Typically we see a lot of people that want to jump right in and do the Olympic lifts, and obviously clean or a high pull, anything like that, isn't going to require any kind of overhead movement. But if we want to get out and start to snatch, we see a lot of people that jump right into it and they physically aren't prepared to get to the positions that they need. In short, they really aren't able to get that full shoulder flexion that it takes to actually get in a good position. So what we see in these people in many cases is the catch position. They have a big forward head posture. They have kind of that big humeral anterior glide where their arms wind up behind their body and their low back is heavily extended instead of catching it in a really...
What he just described there was something I have to do to overhead squat if I'm able to actually get the right spot. If I can get proper upward rotation, I can get my lats to proper length, and I can shrug up. I still have very tight chest muscles, pec muscles, so I have to really pull back and have my shoulder roll forward quite a bit, even as much as I can, based on what basically Eric Cressey is explaining. This is kind of how you can see like a really bad overhead squat because they don't have the proper shoulder mobility, so they have to compensate.
Good stable position. So I want to go through a couple of tests that we use with our guys to make sure that they're actually cleared for doing this. So George is actually a really good example because he has pretty limited shoulder flexion. So we're going to show you if he lays on the table here. I'm actually going to slide his head all the way up to the top here. When we test for length of the lats, we want to make sure that the hips and the knees are flexed. So we're making sure to flatten his lower back out so he can't compensate to get range by just arching his back to get his arms up overhead. So
and that's kind of what I was talking about earlier about gaining leverage on my previous video, is being able to turn into incline press by arching.
Neutral position of his core. We're just going to take his arms right up, have him nice and relaxed, and just let him drop down all the way, nice and free and easy. Let's see how much range he actually has. So you can see he's got a ton of stiffness that he needs to overpower. George's got a military background, did a lot of pull-ups, and as a result, he's really kind of pulled down aggressive with his lats. So you look at a guy like this, and he's probably not a great candidate for doing a ton of overhead work. Okay? So we actually stand him up. The next thing we're going to look at is how does that work when we're actually competing against gravity. So we put him on his back, and as he goes through this stuff, on a test like that, gravity is actually helping him to get full shoulder flexion. So what happens when we actually ask him to compete against gravity? So we're going to go through shoulder flexion with the thumbs up.
So when you talk about competing against gravity, you also want to think about weight too. It's not just the weight of his hands or his lats and traps trying to overpower the weight of his arms, but also, if you put enough weight over your body is going to move a lot different. If I overhead press 45 pounds versus, say, 185, there's going to be a different effect.
Got it? So as he goes, going nice and slow, he's trying to work his way through this. You can see he's wincing a little bit just because it does feel tight. So that's probably his end range right there. He's lacking in full shoulder flexion.
So you can see that he has a lot better flexibility than me.
Probably not a good candidate for getting overhead. What is interesting though is it actually improved a little bit when we got him into standing, which is actually kind of counterintuitive. But what that means is he's probably developed good core strength in the front to keep his ribs down and allow him to get some scapular stability and get those lats to relax as he works his way up against grip.
So you can see how that's actually a really big point. This is the reason why I want to make this video, because that little tidbit he just said there, he's developed enough strength to kind of keep his body stable and work against his very tight lats so that he can kind of organize and get his hands overhead. It's almost like he has the strength to sort of work around his compensation.
Okay. The biggest test that we use for people is we'll have them go into a back to wall shoulder flexion test. So he's going to step right back to the wall. Okay. From this position, we're going to have him set up about 6 or 8 inches away from the wall with his feet. He's going to flatten his lower back out. Okay. He's going to get his head back to the wall, make a double chin. So effectively, we're taking him not just to neutral, but even to a slightly flexed position by flattening him from his head down to his hips. And from there, we're just going to see how does that back to wall shoulder flexion work. So let's go ahead and do it on your own. Okay. So when he gets up to about that position, we control for that core. It's very, very limited. Okay. What we notice about George that's
so you can see how when you flatten his back, he can't go up. I know it's obvious, but it's like when you really put yourself in neutral, like Eric Cressey put him in, he essentially loses all range of motion.
Interesting though is when he gets a little bit of a scapular elevation pattern, meaning we use those upper traps to kind of counteract that really aggressive downward pull that the lats create. We kind of get those lats to relax, and you'll see that his range of motion actually improves quite a bit.
So a word on what he just said there is like, you know, if he uses his traps, he can get upward rotation to get his lats to relax. Ultimately, you think about like getting your hands above your head. You're trying to get your arms over your head, and you know, you're using a little bit of your traps, but it's really more using your front delt, and you're allowing your shoulder to go up. But if your lats are super tight, your traps have to essentially work against the lats to perform the movement, which is not efficient.
Come up, let's turn these guys on just a little bit when you get to about shoulder height. We're just going to work our way up while keeping that low back flat. What you notice, he might not get all the way to the wall, but he can definitely get a little bit closer. So effectively what we've done is we've helped him to kind of be guided up into that scapular upward rotation to overpower some of that stiffness that's really holding him down. So if you get good anterior core control, you work hard on lengthening your lats, and you work on getting some scapular upward rotation, you usually be in a great position.
So that was one of the videos I wanted to show you, kind of just talk through a little bit, provide some commentary. The other one that I wanted to also talk about is this one here on overhead shrugs that I demonstrated on my other video. Let's go barbell overhead shrugs.
But about a rationale for using a new exercise and looking at scapular stability is what we're going to do today. So Tony's actually a really good case study for demonstrating this, simply because his shoulder girdle tends to sit in a lot of depression. In other words, you see this heavy downslope.
So this is actually a really good assessment as well. I recommend you guys watch this video again by itself. There'll be a link in the description. And this is a downward slope I was talking to you, but I noticed this in some people, and I've noticed it in myself.
Of kind of the tops of his shoulders, which is indicative of his scapula or his shoulder blades sitting a little bit too low on his rib cage. So one of the things that from an ideal postural state.
So he's just said like the shoulder blade is sitting low on the rib cage, and one thing I want to mention about that is that it's actually a joint. The shoulder blade against the rib cage is an actual joint. It's called a thoracic scapulo-thoracic joint, I think. Essentially that space between the shoulder blade and the thoracic spine, and that also has to move.
Standpoint we want from Tony is actually to carry in a little bit more elevation. You'll see a little bit more definition in his traps, and he'll get back to neutral. Okay, what that speaks to is the whole idea of starting from a neutral position before you move dynamically.
So I made a video about this before, talking about having neutral shoulders, and a lot of the time we're taught, or a lot of things that I've been teaching a lot of people, because a lot of people have really bad first shoulder posture, we tell them to pull the shoulder blades back and drive them down, but then you can overcompensate, and what happens is you're not neutral anymore, you're actually overly depressed, essentially making it so that it's difficult for you to get your elbow above your arm without having proper scapulo-humeral rhythm. That's the scapula and the humerus, the upper arm, to work properly together.
We're going to look at Tony's shoulder blades during overhead activity. His scapula needs to upwardly rotate to accommodate the congruency that you need to have with the ball on the socket. Right? So the humeral head has to sit right on the glenoid of that scapula. What we see with folks who sit in a lot of depression is they often don't elevate and upwardly rotate sufficiently to get all the way up overhead.
So that one right there, that what he just said, a lot of people who are too depressed in their shoulders don't upwardly rotate their scapula enough when they get their hands over their head, causing issues where the humerus, the upper arm, a bone runs into the scapula or the AC joint, or not necessarily runs into it, but there's muscles under there like your supraspinatus, your rotator cuff muscles that cause lots of problems.
That upward rotation comes from a combination of lower trap recruitment, upper trap recruitment, as well as your serratus anterior, helping to keep everything snug to the rib cage as it happens.
So that's actually really important. Let me rewind that again.
Combination of lower trap recruitment, upper trap recruitment, as well as your serratus anterior, helping to keep everything snug to the rib cage as it happens.
So the serratus anterior is the muscles of the front of the what do you call it? The rib cage, right? The boxer muscle. When you're getting jacked and ripped and lean, that's what you get. I'm gonna actually pull this up real quick. Muscle premium, so that way you can see lower trap, upper trap, and then also serratus anterior, so that you can get a better visual of what Eric Cressey is talking about. And I think this is kind of cool. This is actually turning out to be a pretty good video. Oops. So let's go see home, regional views, full musculature. Okay, so that's what he's talking about here. this up. So this is the chest here, right? Let's go from the back view, just like. So just like what we saw back here, right? He's got his body right there. Let's go back over here, and let's move up. And upper trap, right? This is the traps right here. Right, obviously that helps shrug the shoulder blade upwards. But also, you gotta let's remove the lat so that we can see this better. Let's hide that. And you can see here the serratus anterior. Let me peel all these off. The infraspinatus, these external rotators of the shoulder. I'm gonna peel this lat. So he was talking about upper trap and then also lower trap right here. Hide that there, and you can see the scapula there, and you can see the serratus anterior that attaches to the front. And then when I rotate this around, you can kind of see how it attaches to this area here. Let me hide this. See the front, these bones here in the rib cage. Let me move this chest, and you kind of see how all these muscles, when these muscles shorten, what happens is this scapula is going to move forward as the scapula rotates upward when the use of the traps. Hope that makes sense. Maybe you can get that visual in your head as.
In a guy like Tony's situation, his lat becomes very, very dominant, and the upper trap actually becomes lengthened. So what we need to do is we need to get this guy turned on, but we need to make sure.
It's sort of interesting that he said his trap is lengthened. It's possible to have a ton of trigger points in your traps, but still have it overly lengthened.
Happening functionally. We don't want to just go and do a bunch of regular shrugs, because we want it to happen in that position of upward rotation so that we're actually moving in a good spot, right? So for a guy like Tony, what we're looking for is our benchmark, and really for everybody in that matter, we take his spine, and then we would basically draw an angle to the medial border of his scapula. In this case, it's right here. Once we get to that upwardly rotated position, it gets all the way up, we want about a 55, 60 degree angle in that top position. So a barbell overhead shrug is a great opportunity to train things in the right spot. So once you slide underneath here, we usually do this with lighter weights. Doesn't have to be anything. Not going into a forward head posture. He's basically a straight. So if we were to watch this from the side, there's two big things that we want to keep in mind. The first one is he's not going into a forward head posture. He's basically a straight line from his head to his heels. He's not in a lot of extension, right? So he's actually got his glutes and his anterior core on. We usually do this with lighter weights. Doesn't have to be anything crazy.
So this would be something that you would do like a warm-up or maybe a rehab day or something you just incorporate. It's not like something that you would do like as part of your working sets. I guess you can incorporate it, but it's not really meant to be like a particular day you do it. It's like doing rotator cuff exercises to help improve motor control. And again, you have to be pretty ambitious to do this stuff, because if you watch my channel or you look at other things, you're running into a ton of problems like I have, and you have the knowledge that I have, you just start to realize like there's so many things that I need to fix if I want to train the way I want to do. So just some things to think about. You know, if you have enough time, you can do it. But the problem is we always run out of time. And you can only tackle one thing at a time, or you can only make considerable progress if you really work on one thing at a time. And this is definitely something I'm going to spend a lot more time on, because overhead mobility is important to me. Now, these other two videos, which I'm not going to really talk about too much, is the one overhead press video here with, who is this? With Marsh. And then the other one here is overhead press with the strength dock. These are some videos that will be on this playlist, so you can take a look at the link that I'll have in the description about that if you want to look at them to their fullest. And if you have any questions, you know, if you've watched them already, maybe you can just leave a question below if you have one. And I hope you found this video helpful, because it was actually kind of fun to make. All right, see you guys in the next video.